Hello, one and all, and welcome to Creative Spark, my YouTube show where I talk to cool people about the cool things that they do. With me today is someone who is a super geek, the super geeky. It's Mike.
Hello, hello.
That's a
Thank you
song
so much for having
reference
me.
that's just going to go over the heads of so many people who watch
It
YouTube.
took me a second, but I got there. I
How are
don't have
you?
like the deepest musical knowledge, so for a minute I was like, "This seems familiar." Wait, I have heard this song. This one I know.
Yeah, yeah.
How are you?
I'm tired.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I'm always tired. I'm good otherwise, though.
good,
How about yourself?
good, good. I was telling you before we went live that my little one, my baby, is teething with like something like 6 new teeth coming in right now, so it's a little hectic here at the Christensen's homestead.
Yes, yes. Teething is the joy that never ends. There's dribble, and there's the screaming, and there's the not sleeping, and it's just it's a multifaceted hellscape.
But I've been assured that once this part's over, raising a child gets really easy, right? That's how it works, right? Once a difficult thing finishes, it's just smooth
It's
sailing.
just the one difficult thing.
Just the one difficult thing.
Just the one difficult thing. That's all. That's it. You got it. End of interview.
But it's wonderful. Being a parent is absolutely amazing.
It is.
But there are moments where you're just like, no, please don't do that. You will hurt yourself, and then your mother will kill me.
Yep. No, my son is physically fearless and quite adept, and it leads to a lot of like, please stop.
No. I promise you, this won't end the way you think it will.
If you listen, we can avoid going to A&E, and that would be good. They do not listen. You have to catch them.
Yes, that has been our experience as well.
Outside of parenting, though, let's talk about your YouTube channel.
Yeah.
That is what we're here for. So when did you decide to start one?
It was probably late 2021. I was doing a lot of like TikTok, and I was like, had an idea for a video, and I was like, ooh, this feels like it's going to be longer than a TikTok. It was specifically about a scene in Critical Role and like a lesson we could learn from it. And I was like, I bet you if I went back earlier, I could find lessons in other episodes too. And then I was like, this would be very, very difficult to do on TikTok because I'd have to do multiple TikToks per episode. And that already would be a challenge of itself. Then you also have the discoverability problems of trying to do a series on TikTok. And I was like, I think it's time to do some YouTube. And I'd done a little bit of YouTube in the past, but this was a new channel, and launched it in April 2022 after working on it for a few months. So with that, it became Critical Role Demystified, which was sort of the flagship series on my channel. And then I also do other stuff to, cover other topics, so I'm not exclusively a Critical Role channel. I know that the algorithm wants us all to be exactly one thing, and I was like, I have to get in front of that really early on. I'll do a bunch of Critical Role videos early, but I also have to, like, my 5th video can't be a Critical Role video because I want my audience to also know that I do other things. Because if I try to do that in a year, that's going to be a lot harder of a sell for the audience.
Yeah, I think getting ahead of, if you're going to do more than one thing, you do have to get it in early. Otherwise, it'll confuse your audience. Which is, well, not confuse them. I don't think they're going to be like, what's going on? But, algorithm. So,
yeah, exactly.
So presumably
they won't be necessarily confused, that they just won't click on the videos they're not as interested in. So you make sure that they know early on when they're catching up with the channel that there is a lot more diversity of topics within the boundaries of what you think makes for a reasonable niche. Which is why basically I just talk about D&D and RPGs on this channel. If I want to do something that's only about movies, I have another channel for that, but this is like my D&D and otherwise channel.
How has it been juggling like multiple forms of creative output then?
Tricky. It can be tricky for sure, because there are only so many hours in the day. So you do just end up having to prioritize and say, okay, I've got my Super Geek channel, SuperGeekMike is the D&D channel, and that's where the majority of my audience is, so we'll focus on that. And then individual videos, it's like, okay, well, I obviously want to do a Critical Role video pretty soon, but I want to do these other things too, and so it's that perpetual balance of like, how much can you get away with in a given month versus It's like, okay, I know next month I have to do something about this
Yeah.
other topic because everyone's talking about it. And I've sort of resigned myself that I can't be the current news guy, and that's okay. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not going to be the person who's like, I just got my hands on the monster manual, and here's what I am. Like, nope, I will read the monster manual at some point. Look for a video on it in 4 or 5 months, because and that's okay with me, because like that is not. I would much rather write my videos out in advance because that makes me feel a lot more comfortable. Early videos, there's stuff in those early videos that I get comments on all the time, and I'm like, I know I didn't finish my thought. I was going off bullet points. I started at the setup. I didn't finish what I was saying. I get comments about it 3 years later. So now I just write full scripts. So my process just takes longer than people who are able to move faster. And I've made my peace with that because it means that I'm more comfortable with my process and I know that I'm getting out my thoughts.
Yeah. And not being as stressed, which is helpful, I'd imagine.
Exactly. Yeah.
Especially with a 1-year-old in the mix.
That's always the factor as well.
How far in advance do you schedule stuff generally?
I have a pretty clear idea of what videos I'm going to make for the rest of the year.
Okay.
Now I make exceptions, and I had to reassess this year. I had to be like, okay, let's strip this down because this is too ambitious, and sort of start pushing some of them off. But I am an over planner. I really like to look far ahead and be like, okay. So for example, I do videos about Critical Role. I try to do a video about, a new episode of Campaign 1 every other week. And what I can do is then say, okay, if when I get to episode 82 or so, that's a perfect time for me to also make a video about high-level NPCs, because I've been wanting to talk about that for a while. That would be the perfect opportunity to do so. Okay, when we get to episode 83, maybe I can make a traps video. That's going to be a bit more of an elaborate video. Maybe we wait. Maybe we push that one off until a future year. And so that's sort of the process of what can I do that's going to either tie into another Critical Role video or that I can reference in another video. It gives me a nice excuse to focus in on certain topics. But other times I'm just I want to talk about this, and when is a good gap in the schedule that I can throw in a video about some other topic.
Are you still enjoying doing the Critical Role videos so far in?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're still in my personally favorite Critical Role story arc, which is this 40 episode long section of the campaign. But it's always fun to just go through and rediscover moments and rediscover new lessons that I hadn't really factored in. One of the big ones was when I was incorporating what I thought was the pacing of this section of the campaign into my own games. I was taking the wrong lesson from it. And so reassessing it on this watch through, I'm like, oh, I see. This is why it wasn't working in my games. And sort of being able to retroactively figure out how I took the wrong lesson from this campaign and hopefully repolish it and present it to the audience and say the decompressed story of the story arc only works because that's the way the players want it run. Because I was rewatching the section of the campaign, I'm like, oh, I did not notice how often Matt Mercer is really pushing to get through this story arc faster, and the players are saying no. So me as the game master shouldn't have been trying to run slower, more decompressed campaign arcs to try to match the style, because that's not what Matt was doing, and it wouldn't work if your players weren't on board. So I'm always finding lessons like that. And I actually, the next Critical Role video that's going to come out as of recording, I think it'll be out by the time this interview comes out, is about episode 75. And that's one of those where I'm like, I want to talk about this specific lesson ever since I started the channel. There's something that Matt does at the end of this video, and that is what I've wanted to do a video about ever since I launched the channel. So, and there's a few of those sort of milestones across the series still that I'm really excited to talk about this fight. I'm really excited to talk about this role-playing interaction. And sometimes I know what I'm going to say. There's others where there's a major role-playing scene coming up in 10 episodes or so. I have no idea what the lesson is going to be there. I haven't really figured out there's going to be a lot of don't try this at home in that video. But it is still fun and exciting, and then I get some feedback from the audience as well, where people are like, oh, also Matt mentioned this in this interview that you can factor in as well. And so it's nice to get this engagement with the audience and with the critter community through the videos as well.
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things about your channel is that it's runs kind of in the opposite direction to a lot of D&D YouTube advice channels, at least, where a lot of channels tend to lean into don't worry about being like actual players. And obviously one of your key points is that if you want to, you can.
Right.
Was that is that like the most important through line for you?
I think the most important through line is definitely a part of that, but if you sort of spread it out, it is just about demystifying things and trying to reconcile the fact that we do want to do all these ambitious things in our game, and we put things on pedestals. We put, obviously, professional game masters on pedestals all the time and actual play shows, but we also put certain techniques. You know, there's certain things like, oh, I could never do that, or I can never, you know, that's a more advanced technique. And I think it is absolutely vital that there are people in the YouTube sphere that say things like, start small, focus on this, focus on that, you know, giving you all the guidance. But I also like that I'm able to kind of in the corner say, you actually can do all this stuff you think is advanced. It's actually not that hard. You just need to reframe how you think about things. Once you get into that mindset, this all gets really, really easy. And so we're really starting to, I think we're going to be talking about villains a lot more in the probably next year or two. And that's one where I know I have a lot of good advice to share, because that's one of those categories where I'm like, this is not as hard as I know it seems. At least that's how I feel. But yeah, it is just about making sure people know that you should feel free to try stuff. You know, it's okay if it fails, but just try cool stuff. I think it's absolutely important that there are people who say, here's the one quick trick to start GMing, you know, with no prep or you know, without building a whole world in advance. And I've made one of those videos too. You know, sometimes you have to cover them from your own perspectives and relearn the hard lessons yourselves. But I also like to point at the most impressive people in our field and say, you can do that too. And I think that is what separates me from a lot of people in the community. I've seen a lot of people really elevate, especially Critical Role, whether they love them or hate them. You know, they are the sort of like shining example, or the knight to overthrow, or like take down a peg. And if you imagine taking Matt Mercer down a peg, you're still imagining him higher up than you. And that's the mindset that I just really try to get out of, and just say, like, these are just people. Yes, they're really, really good at certain things. That does not mean that they are anything other than human beings who are just really passionate about this hobby. You know?
Yeah, it was born from a love of D&D, ultimately.
Yeah. I think that's also, like, the scripted, I think it's overblowing it to call it a conspiracy theory, but the sort of hot take that's always floating around out there that Critical Role is scripted stems from, you know, you can argue about whether it comes from admiration or jealousy or just not recognizing what they're doing as D&D. Wherever it comes from isn't really the point. The point is, you're seeing something, you're saying, that doesn't feel like one of my games.
Yeah.
And I watch it and I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, all I'm seeing is just that the players got better at catching Matt's plot hooks.
Yeah.
And Matt got better at providing plot hooks that his players would respond to, because they played together every week for 10 years. And I don't think that's as difficult as it makes it seem. You know, again, just taking the sense of like, yes, we can all go through and I can point to specific examples and say, yes, this part was pre-planned between the player and the GM. You could do that too. Yes, this one is not. But ultimately, it still comes down to this misalignment of like, the reason it doesn't feel like your version of D&D is because they play a different game than you. That's okay. If you don't want to play their game, that's totally fine. If you do, here's how we get there.
Yeah.
And I think that mindset really comes from watching in the late 2010s, watching a lot of artists I admire have huge falls from grace and just be like, okay, I've definitely talked about how wonderful that artist was and how untouchable they were, and now I feel bad about that. And we shouldn't. Obviously, we didn't know. But then it's like, okay, if I'm still such a fan of all this work from Joss Whedon, for example, but I also don't want him to keep working in the industry and have a position where he can continue to abuse people, then what can we look at that he did well so that we can all start doing projects as well as him, and we never have to hire him again. You know, and it's like that sort of mindset of like, if we can just divorce people from their status before they're problematic and start really sort of incorporating their lessons now, then I think that helps all of us, you know, because I've definitely been the person who watches a piece of art and thinks I could never do that. And I watch another piece of art and I'm like, oh, this inspires me to be an artist.
Yeah.
I want to try to chase that feeling.
Yeah.
Much more than the former.
That makes perfect sense. Was there a point in your content creation journey where you realized it wasn't just like something you were doing for fun?
I mean, not really, because I still do it for fun.
Yeah.
So like not in that sense. I think I was very, very pleased with the reaction to those early videos. Mm-hmm. I mean, a couple of those early videos blew up in ways that I was not expecting. Mm-hmm. But I think once people got into the rhythm of the demystified videos, that also started really responding well to my other videos, which don't get nearly the same numbers. Because obviously, while not everyone in the community cares about Critical Role, there's still a whole huge section that does.
It's popular, which is, as it turns out.
Yeah, it's popular. It seems to work out well. But I think it was like really seeing that consistent audience starting to come back for lots of my videos that really like made me feel very like I wasn't just making this into a vacuum. You know, I was always going to make these videos even if nobody watched them.
Yeah.
The amount of time I put into them or how often I put them out was always going to be dependent on how successful they were with an audience. But just seeing the same people coming back and seeing the same names come up in the comments over and over again, it's just really gratifying, because it's like, oh, there are other people out there who, even if they don't agree with me all the time, I've definitely had some of those names pop up and say, I think you're completely wrong about this take about the gods in D&D or whatever it is. That's totally fine. I only care that you understand where I'm coming from. Yeah. We can start having a debate from there. That's totally fine. But just seeing the same people showing up over and over again, and some of the amazing generosity of them then showing up in my Patreon or just talking about me on social media, it's just completely wonderful.
Yeah, I think I'm a fairly small creator, and having a couple of commenters who come like every few videos and make themselves known is like, oh, it's worth it.
Yeah.
Which is
exactly.
Nice.
Exactly.
Outside of the following along with the Critical Role campaigns, how do you pick what you want to do videos on?
I have like a Google Doc full of like hundreds of different video topics, and sometimes I'll know I want to talk about something because it, like I said earlier, it syncs up with a Critical Role video, but then I get to it and I'm like, oh, did I have as much to say about this topic as I thought I did?
Yeah.
So what I try to do is like start putting them on the schedule in advance, and then I just like picking something to put it on the schedule, and then it just starts percolating in my head. And if it doesn't do that, it goes off the schedule for a while. You know, if it's like, oh, I don't think I have as much to say about gold as I thought I did, or at least it can wait until I collect my thoughts a little bit better. I try to sync up with things. I try to be like, if I do something about dragons when the dragon book is coming out, then maybe it'll work out well. But it's kind of hard to do that. It was like, oh, maybe I can do something about... That's actually just happened where I was like, oh, maybe I can do something about like Mission Impossible, lessons from that when the new movie comes out. And then as it was getting closer, I was like, I don't have a take yet. So I'm just going to scratch that video, because I would love to put out a Mission Impossible themed video around the time the movie comes out. I was like, I don't know what it would be. And maybe I'll come back to it at some point. Maybe I'll actually watch through the video or watch through the movies again and something will click for me. But that was an example of where trying to force it did not work. Where I was like, if I just sit here and I think about Mission Impossible for a while, I'll come up with something that connects it to D&D. I was like, no, it does. It does. Sometimes that can work, but that time it did not.
Have you ever pushed through the video idea and then been like, that was a mistake?
Very rarely, and I'm not gonna say which videos they are because I don't want people to go and watch them. But there have been like maybe a couple where I was like, I don't think I had as much to say about that one as I thought I did. Like maybe a world building video or something. I'm like, that probably could have been a part of another video. I don't know if it needed to be its own thing. I didn't pad it or anything. I really do try not to do that. If people watch my videos and feel they're padded, that is actually just how I talk. But but there are times where I watch something back and I'm like, okay, that maybe could have used a little more time in the oven. But honestly, I don't really look back that often. I just kind of push forward. If something comes up a lot in the comments, that will be my indication of like, oh, that may need to be its own video. Where if something like keeps being brought up over and over, the same video keeps getting comments about the same thing, I'm like, okay, I either didn't make my point very well, or I'm really not on the same page with people, and people don't understand where I'm coming from. Like I in a video made a reference about how I was like, oh yeah, an initiative order, which really doesn't matter. And these people were like, what? Of course initiative order matters. I was like, okay, I didn't explain that at all. And that's fine. That's fine. But people feel more strongly about that than I did. But that's another one where I'm like, I don't have a video for that yet. Maybe someday I'll talk about that and clarify where I was coming from. But that wasn't one that I felt strongly enough about that I was like, oh, I got to make a video about that right now. Yeah. Because it's just like, okay, I'll write that one down. And if I feel like there's a hot take on that one, I'll come back to it. And then there's something sometimes like D&D drama. I really don't do videos about D&D drama often, but I've seen one thing keep coming up in my comments for like way longer than I thought it would. And sometimes I'll touch on something when it's happening because it'll kind of line up with my whatever video I was already going to make. Like I made a video about the player's handbook cover. And I was like, oh, well, I can touch on this very minor controversy that happened around this mini based on the red box cover because it's kind of related to that. And people were actually asking me for my opinion on it. And I was like, well, I can fold it into that video. But there's one thing in particular where I was like, I am still getting comments about this. And that seems insane to me. I think this might have to be a video because I know people have made videos about this, but people are still talking about it. It's been like 2 or 3 years. That seems crazy. I don't understand why, but I want to kind of like dip my toes into the counter arguments. Yeah. See what they're actually saying. Yeah. And be like, okay, let's see if there's anything here that's worth actually talking about. There was one creator, I really try not to make videos about other creators, but there was one where I was like, he's just so wrong. He's so wrong about stuff. So I was like,
and
let me watch his videos and see. It's not. But I was watching his videos and I was just sitting there and I was like, no, I don't think this is worth making a video about someone else. I don't want to do YouTube drama, and what they're discussing is not moving the conversation of the hobby in any interesting directions that are worth getting in front of. So I was like, I'm just gonna drop that video, leave it alone. And sometimes I'll write full scripts and I'll look at them and be like, okay, I got it out of my system. I don't need to make this video. Such a good
way to get it out of your system as well, is to write stuff. I've done that with articles where I'm like, I want to write this, and then I'll write it and I'm like, to the void.
Yeah, exactly. I did put out one recently where I was like, okay, I'll put this on my Patreon if people want to watch it. But when I announced it, I was like, you don't need to care about this. You shouldn't care about this. This subject is stupid. But I got my thoughts out and I filmed them, so here they are. But most of the time, if I have a moment like that, I'm like, okay, I wrote it. I know what my feelings are on this. I processed them. I can put this away now.
Very, very cool. Do you do this full time at the moment?
At the moment, yes, I do.
Is that the aim going forwards?
That is the aim going forward. Yeah, the challenge right now is that it's a little harder to put the baby in a playpen and like walk away. Or what I used to do is I would write at my desk and the baby would just be playing around. But now he can open my drawers and just like starts pulling out like batteries and scissors and stuff. And I was like, okay, so the desk has to move to a place the baby isn't. So it's just a little bit harder to work while the baby's playing now. I try to like, do research by like listening to something on my phone. Yeah. Or when I'm on a drive, if I'm going to go run errands, I can do a little bit of research there. But it's just about finding a new balance, which not the first time someone working from home has had to deal with that problem. But thankfully, I'm in a pretty good situation where we have family that lives with us that can sort of take him for a little bit so I can sit down and write a script and stuff like that. But yeah, the goal is still to do this full time going forward.
Have you got
this is really the only thing I'm really, really good at. So
I mean, that's fair enough. Have you got a plan for like how you want to shape the channel going forwards? Are there things that you'd like to change as you move on?
This year I sort of added narrative elements to my videos. So like there's an ongoing through line through this year. And the idea is that this is a year where I'm talking about story structure. And so, of course, there's also this story playing out in well, cross my fingers, hopefully going to be a satisfying 3-act structure throughout the year. But that is sort of like this narrative aspect playing out where there's like a cartoon wizard who hangs out on my channel too, and sort of rises and falls in the story and sort of reflecting the lessons that I'm, if I'm doing a video about Doctor Who and how they seeded this major storyline they were doing by just these minor little references. I do the same thing in my own video with the cartoon wizard and the sort of other elements of the story going on to sort of show it in action. But it's also just a fun way for me to flex a different creative muscle.
Of course, which is important because it's easy to get locked into just doing the one thing. Is there a specific bit of advice, if there was one bit of advice that you had to like take and you really wanted people to take on board from you, what would that be?
From me, I do think that it is primarily the advice to not worry so much about how impressive any sort of aspect, or how daunting is maybe the better word, any particular aspect of D&D is, and just start drilling down on and working on it. Either focus on the things that you're really, really good at, or focus on the things that you're bad at and start improving them. Like I know I'm good at villains, so I tend to have a lot of focus on good villains. I know I'm bad at dungeon design, or rather, room design. So that is something that I'm definitely working on, especially now that I'm running an in-person game for the first time in like 5 years. I was like trying to actually sit down and be like, okay, what can I add to the battlefield that I really wish had been there in a lot of other encounters that I've been running over the years? And that is sort of, I think, the lesson of like, it is absolutely okay to feel intimidated by things. Just don't let that hold you back from trying things that you think are cool.
DMing is a lot, as it turns out. So yeah, figuring out what your strengths and weaknesses are is always useful. Yeah,
I actually have a video about this that I need to sit down and write. It's such a daunting one, but it is just exactly about like find your thing, find something that you do well, and really drill down on that. We have not. I've been doing 70 plus episodes of Critical Role videos. We all know that everyone in that cast is good at voice acting. I haven't really focused on that because there's other lessons I want to draw from. But like when we watch that, we know, Matt Mercer probably is doing a cool voice because he knows he can. He's good at that. He's going to sort of focus on that as something that helps make his games stand out. You don't have to do that. I am kind of backing off from trying to do different voices because it's just been really hard to like feel comfortable doing them recently. But that's okay because I have these other things that I know I can sort of draw a little bit more attention to as something that I feel like I'm doing pretty well.
Makes sense. How often do you actually get to play yourself?
If I wasn't doing a monthly game right now with my wife and some other in-person friends, it would not be very often. It's been really, really hard to find the time. And that's actually why I've sort of scaled back on how many videos I'm putting out, is because it's like, I'm not actually playing. When I put out 2 videos a week, it's actually really, really hard to sit down and play. And I would like to play some more games. So another one of my groups, someone just had a baby, but pretty soon I'm going to reach out to them and be like, hey, do you feel like you could carve out another couple hours to finish up that one shot that we did in March? And there's some other groups that I need to get back to that I was so smart where I was like, I'm going to have these campaigns and I'm going to wrap them all up in May of last year or April of last year, right before my kid was born. Well, my kid was born 5 weeks early. So there's all these sort of like unfinished campaigns where I have to come back to them and be like, I know it's been like a year, but I do still want to give you guys the finale or come back to this other campaign for Act 2. But it's just been, just trying to get a little bit further ahead on my channel and then come back to them hopefully in the next month or two.
You do genuinely get more time as the kids get older because they start sleeping better, and then you get using and stuff.
What I've noticed is that it sort of waxes and wanes with particular shifts in their development. But we're getting there.
There's something to look forward to. Yeah, because I play 4 times a week. I run 2 sessions a week and then play into a week. But it's all online.
And see,
so it's easier.
I do know that is too much for me because that's what I was doing pre-baby. And it was burning me out. So it is just about finding the right balance of like, I want to play with more of these groups, but I can't do weekly groups for everybody. So what can I realistically actually manage? And, you know, once I'm able to sort of like feel a little bit more comfortable with where the channel is in this moment, because it's been a hectic couple of months here. That's going to be the next question is like, okay, what can I actually do in terms of running games for these other groups?
Do you get to play in games, or is it just DMing?
It's funny because like one of my groups is all of us want to run games, and I'm like, oh yeah, you can run, or you can run, but then I'm also like, okay, but I also there's a new game I want to try. Like I'd be like, listen, I know everyone wants to run, and I want to play in all of your games, but I think I would have a lot of fun running Daggerheart for you guys, or whatever it is, or Shadow Dark, or we're in the middle of a Avatar: The Last Airbender one shot, cool. And so like because there's all these new games coming out, and I want to try all of them, and so it'll be interesting to see. I am fully prepared to at some point sit back and just let other people run games, but then also I'm like, but okay, let me just run a real quick one shot in Draw Steel once I get my hands on that one. So
self-inflicted forever DM. Basically,
it is exactly that. It is the I have no problems with being a game master all the time. You know, my issues are all scheduling, and that's true whether or not I'm a player or a game master.
That's a constant, yeah.
Exactly. And I know, and this is not baby, this is just me in general. I am the biggest scheduling problem in all of my groups. It is me. I'm the problem. I'm the campaign killer in terms of how easily and readily available I am. I have weird hours, and I know they're a problem. But I also just like, and there are games where I'm like, oof, this burned me out. I need a break. But I also like, I like running games. I don't feel that begrudging sense of like, I wish someone else would take the reins, because I don't really experience a ton of that in my groups. It's just more about getting the motivation to get everybody all together.
Yeah.
And that's always hard.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. I'm really on the fence as to whether or not I prefer playing or running, and it's sort of this weird shift. The more I DM, the more I want to just DM.
Yeah.
It's odd, but it's fun.
No, definitely.
Is there anything in particular you would like to plug?
Just the channel, SuperGeekMike, and probably more announcements coming up in the next couple months about cool things I'm doing on the channel or other endeavors now that the SRD is out. Hopefully some more stuff coming to the Patreon soon as far as like D&D content. Probably in the next couple months though, just to like temper people's expectations. But yeah, come to the channel, watch some videos. That's it. That's all I got. Wonderful. I'm really trying not to be on social media these days.
Very fair. It's very bad for you. It's
just not good for my brain or soul.
Yes. So. Physical, psychological, intellectual. It's just bad.
And I scroll through Instagram still because my Instagram feed is mostly just memes. But I don't really post on anything anymore because it's just I don't need the instant feedback of all these people who just disagree with everything anyone says. I've got some great communities that I can like follow and read on lots of platforms. I'm just not at the point where I feel like I need to be putting that much out there outside of my YouTube channel.
Very, very fair. Yeah, I think Discord
but
is taking
I do plan to do some more live streams soonish, so hopefully Twitch soon. Cool. But right now, just the YouTube channel.
Cool. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you finding time for this.
No, of course. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It was really exciting.
No, of course. We're going to wave at the camera now, and that's that. So yeah, thank you. Bye-bye. That's a good awkward wave.